It's no surprise that Rangers fans are feeling disappointed after the results of last season and the direction of the team. But this one thing in particular will have Rangers fans believing again. We're going to break down what that is and why Rangers fans should be fired up heading into next season. We're going to break it all down in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 74% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, and we are so close to our goal of 8,000 subscribers. So if you haven't yet, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. But let's dive right into it. This one thing in particular is why Rangers fans should be fired up heading into next season and why things will be different. And that one thing is, yes, and I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes at this, Mike Sullivan. I think he's going to make that much of a difference, and I think Chris Drury is going to retool the roster. We'll get to that later in the episode, but the main story is about Mike Sullivan, and Vince Mercogliano put together a really good piece, and I'm not going to show all of it in this video, so if you want to read all of it, because there's some great stuff in there, definitely go check it out. This was a great article. But he said, why are the New York Rangers so convinced that Mike Sullivan is the right man for the job? He went out to speak to individuals who've worked with Mike Sullivan in the past to find out who he is and what he's bringing to the table. And we know who Mike Sullivan is from the outside looking in. We know that he's the former assistant coach of the New York Rangers. We know that he's won back-to-back Stanley Cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins almost 10 years ago now at this point. But what is he going to be able to offer and bring to the New York Rangers? And what I think it is, the foremost is being able to work with younger players, first of all, and being able to explain why to players. I feel like Peter Laviolette, from everything we heard with the exit interviews, was the type of coach that said, do this and just do it. And no explanation, there's no communication, and I think you need alignment throughout the organization to be able to win and to be able to succeed, and I didn't feel that with that coach. So with Mike Sullivan, you can see a direct quote here. We'll get into a lot of quotes. He's almost like a sports psychologist. So I thought that was interesting. And this is from Jim Rutherford, who used to work with him, obviously former GM Jim Rutherford. He said he's very smart. He's a great communicator, and he understands the game. And he went on to say, but most importantly, he understands people. He's almost like a sports psychologist in a lot of ways, and he's willing to learn all the time. And there was another quote that stood out to me, and we'll break down later as well, that, he said that players always leave meetings feeling like he actually listened to them and he might actually make some tweaks. And, I think that's a sign of, first of all, a good communicator, and second of all, a good leader. And that's what this is right here. Jack Parker, who was the head coach for 40 seasons at Boston University, spoke out with this quote about, and feel free to pause and read it, I'm not going to read the whole thing, about, how he recruited players and how he liked to talk to the parents to get a real feel for who the player was. And Parker recalled Sullivan's intense training aimed at improving his skating, which had been a knock during the recruiting process, but developed into a strength that was a critical piece in preparation. And I think what he's trying to say is Mike Sullivan is always willing to learn and add things to his tool belt in order to find success. So that's what he's going to bring to the table here. We saw how many times last season and the last two seasons were things not going right with the New York Rangers, and Peter Laviolette made some type of small tweak. Maybe he didn't even make it any type of tweaks, and he makes a small tweak, and it just is the wrong one. Like, every single decision he made was the wrong one. And again, I'm not pinning all of the failures of last season on Peter Laviolette. There was a lot of moving pieces, right? But in terms of the coaching, it wasn't great either, right? We got to talk about it. So I like this from Mike Sullivan. And again, this is another quote from the article as well, that multiple coaches have tried with fleeting results. None have been able to get to Adam Fox, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, and a host of others to forecheck, defend, and attack the high-danger areas with enough consistency. A stubborn core eventually tuned them each out. So this is another issue, though, with not necessarily bringing in Mike Sullivan, but you're bringing in a new philosophy in Mike Sullivan, a new play style, but the players have to buy into it. And if they're not going to do that, then that falls on Chris Drury. And I think he is going to make some changes, and at least try to make some changes this offseason. I noticed, Chris Kreider's not on this list. I don't know if Chris Kreider makes it the next season as a New York Ranger. It'd be difficult to trade Mika Zibanejad, but I'm sure they're going to have the conversation about it. But then this part falls on Chris Drury, that he has to make some changes, right? And not necessarily with the core group of, those three players, because it would be very difficult to do that. And I'm not sure you want to move on from Panarin or Adam Fox at this point anyway. But I think that's very interesting. And again, he's going to have to get them to do these things. It's going to be interesting to see if they do buy into what he's selling, because, he's the type of coach that tells you the why, right? And I think that players are more willing to buy into that, whereas I didn't see that with the previous coach. So that's going to be fun to see if that actually does turn around. And if it doesn't, there's going to be some roster turnover. There's going to have to be. So again, none of the other coaches have been able to get it, but we'll see. And there's so many times last season, I broke it down on the channel as well, that the Rangers just didn't forecheck. The other team had the puck and was just playing with the puck, and the Rangers sat back in games that they needed to be aggressive. They needed to go get goals in order to make the playoffs, and it didn't happen. So does it fall on coaching? The players didn't look bought in. So I do think a lot of the players like and Alexis Lafreniere are going to have really good years next year, because I do think he's going to be able to work with these players, and I think that they're going to be bought in. I do believe that that's going to happen. This is from Jim Cerny on Forever Blue Shirts as well. What the New York Rangers core has accomplished over the years is not nothing, but it is not enough either. And this also falls on Chris Drury. And I am wondering if Mike Sullivan can help with this. And I mean, he went on to say that, they've been to 2 conference finals in the last 4 years. Like, it's nothing to roll your eyes at, right? Like, they made it there, but they weren't good enough to break through the glass ceiling and make it to the Stanley Cup final. And that's what they got to figure out now. Now, the personnel on the team is much different, but I think with a couple tweaks, they can be right back there. I don't think you can win the Stanley Cup with a young team, but you can start to go on runs, gain that experience, and then you can win a Stanley Cup in a couple of years. And JT Miller, yes, he's getting older, but he's still playing some really good hockey. You still have a couple of years left with those legs. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with the roster construction of this team. Now, one other thing I wanted to point out is Mika Zibanejad. There's been a lot of talk about possibly trading him. It's going to be very difficult to do that. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay here. And if he plays the way that he did in the World Hockey Championships just a couple weeks ago, the Rangers will be fine. But he has to play that way. And I think he can play that way if he's on JT Miller's wing, but we don't know how the roster is going to shake out just yet. But he went on to say on Mike Sullivan, he was asked about Mike Sullivan. He said, obviously excited with a coach like that. He's had a lot of success. I had a quick phone call with him, and I'm sure we'll have more calls and more conversations during the summer, obviously getting to know him. So good sign for sure. And, like I mentioned at the World Championships just a couple weeks ago, if he plays that way next season, there will be no trade rumors surrounding his name. It just won't happen. So, because he'll be great and a player that you can rely upon. So he needs to get back to playing the type of hockey that we know he can. And last year was genuinely awful for the first half of the year. But if you look at his stats from February 1st on, he was actually very good on JT Miller's wing. So if he gets back to playing that way, the way that he played the second half, I think that the Rangers will be okay. And, with a new coach, with Alexis Lafreniere actually producing to a level that is satisfactory for the money that he's going to be making, I think they might be okay. But obviously, former first overall pick, you want him to perform. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on too. Last thing before I leave you guys is a quote from Jim Rutherford on Mike Sullivan. He said, one of the things that I tell people that I like the best about Mike is when he has those one-on-one meetings with players. You have a player that feels very strong about their position, and of course, a coach that feels very strong about his position in terms of where they stand. And he'll let that player talk through why the player feels he's right. And even if Silly doesn't agree with the player, he'll always say to them, just meet me halfway. I'm going to meet you halfway here. The player leaves that meeting knowing that the coach listened to him and that there's a chance that the coach is going to move his way a little bit. That was so impressive to me, and I think it's really impressive to the players because the players know that the coach respects them. And that's what I'm talking about, the buy-in. The players, I think, are going to buy in to what Mike Sullivan brings to the table. And if they do that, this will be a good team next season. I'm excited for that. So let me know in the comments what you think about Mike Sullivan and his, the new philosophy he's going to bring in. I like everything that I heard through that article. Shout out to Vince Mercogliano for that. Go check out the whole article. There's so many good quotes and so much good stuff in there. And let me know how you feel about that in the comments. I think the Rangers will be a different team next season with a full, season of the forward group that they have now. I still think there's a couple more changes coming. They have to make a couple more signings, and the defense, it's not going to stay that way. I mean, there's no way it's going to stay that way. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.